Assalamualaikum everyone. A very good evening to all of you who has joined us today. My name is Samira Sohani. I am currently working as a research associate in the Advisory Research and Training Unit of Bangladesh Rating Agency Limited. So as you all know, every month BDRL arranges a webinar addressing significant contemporary issues regarding the economy and business. So this month we have selected a very relevant topic as we have already crossed half of fiscal year 2023. Our topic is the economic outlook of Bangladesh half-yearly review. And as like our previous sessions, we have here some distinguished panelists. We're very honored to have them with us. And before starting the program, I would like to introduce them to all of you. So I have a very privilege to introduce our first panelist, Dr. Muhammad Navid Ahmed. Sir is the Managing Director of Miyako Appliance Bangladesh, and he is also a joint convener of Standing Committee for Industry Academia Linkage and Skill Development, DCCI. Welcome to our webinar, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Navid sir is an emerging business leader with multidimensional engagement in academia and industry. He is also a joint convener of the largest and oldest, most prominent SME chamber of Bangladesh. He is the first doctorate degree holder DBA program of IBA. Sir has completed his bachelor degree from IIUM Malaysia in Islamic Finance and General Management, and Masters in Electronic Business Management, IT Project Management with Finance Orientation. We are very, very privileged to have you here today, sir. Okay. So moving on to our next panelist, we have here Mr. ATM Obaidullah, FCMA. Sir is the Vice President of Dhaka Bank Limited. Sir has been working in the banking industry for around 18 years and also is a fellow member of the ICMAP. He has spent majority of his career managing credit rating related activities, a bank's core operation, tackling complex and challenging situations. And he has completed his undergraduate and master's degree from University of Dhaka in accounting. Welcome to our webinar, sir. And our next panelist is Dr. Nazmut Sadat Khan. He is an economist of World Bank. Welcome to our webinar, Nazmut Sadat, sir. So Nazmut Sadat sir has completed his PhD from University of Münster, Germany, with summa cum laude distinction. He has postdoctorate fellow of the same university. Dr. Sadat was a visiting academic at the University of Oxford and a visiting fellow at the David Center for Russia and Eurasian Students at the Harvard University. He has more than 10 publications in renowned national and international journals. We're very, very much proud to have them here today. And yes, of course, we have our keynote speaker, Mohammad Kamrul Bari, MIPA AFA. So Kamrul Bari is the first Assistant Vice President of BDRAL. He has his bachelor in accounting and an MBA in finance, and currently pursuing DBA from IBA. And Bari Bhai is a research enthusiast with more than 13 years of experience in research, teaching, consulting, and organizational event management activities. So yes, last but not the least, we have our moderator, our CEO, sir, Dr. Saeed Abdullah Mamun, FCMA. So Mamun sir has been in the rating industry for more than 15 years. And sir has earned his PhD in finance from School of Management, Asian Institute of Technology. Thailand. He has completed his BBA in accounting and MBA in strategic management from Department of Accounting and Information System, Dhaka University. Mamun sir is a certified professional of cost management accounting and a fellow member of ICMAB. So before, we are very privileged to have so much talented people here today. So before handing over to our moderator, Dr. Mamun, I would like to say that we will have a question answer session at the end of this program. So please ask the question at the question box. You will get your answer. So Mamun sir, please take over.
Thank you, Samira, for your very generous introduction. And yes, I do agree with you that we are very honored, and this is our privilege to get today's eminent resource persons from industry, from banking industry, and from the multilateral organization like World Bank. So on behalf of the BDRL team, we again would like to convey our sincere gratitude for your precious presence. And I'm also delighted to have my all extraordinary, brilliant colleagues for whom I always feel proud and would like to take any challenges for adding value to the industry. With this few words, I'd like to just take the privilege to introduce our company. Can you see the slide?
Yes, sir. It's visible.
Yeah. So, the main purpose of the monthly webinar organized by the BDRL is to create a platform of discussing on the contemporary issues from different point of views, so that all we interact here can get some insights about that issue that helps us to learn and apply in our respective roles. So in this respect, today's topic is the economic outlook of Bangladesh. In fact, this is our regular research outcome from the BDRL perspective. As a credit rating and knowledge-based organization, we try to follow the economic indicators and try to predict as well what may possibly happen based on the historical outlook. So from that point of view, this is one of our regular research outcome we are going to present today and listen from our eminent panelists. So BDRL Bangladesh Rating Agency Limited is a Dun & Bradstreet South Asia, Middle East, and Africa subsidiary. It incorporated in Bangladesh 2008 and got license from BSEC in 2012. It has already completed 37,000 SME rating and more than 300 corporate ratings. And along with the Dun & Bradstreet, there are the other eminent shareholders who all are the institutional shareholders of different like renowned banking and financial institutions. And our parent company, Dun & Bradstreet, is almost 200 years old company. And it has more than 500 million business record so far up to this month. It is a listed company in New York Stock Exchange, and almost 90% of the Fortune 500 companies, including Google, use the DNB data. And this company carries a very prestigious legacy, which demonstrate that almost 4 ex-presidents, including Abraham Lincoln, were the ex-employees of Dun & Bradstreet. And it works around the world with more than 200 offices. And Dun & Bradstreet South Asia Middle East Limited looks after the 67 markets in the South Asia, Middle East, and African region, with the head office in Dubai. And it has the 7 line of services. So it provides the services related to risk management solution, rating agencies, credit bureau, sales and marketing solution, economic analysis, research and advisory services, and financial technology solutions. And BDRL exclusively focuses on the credit rating company as a licensed and by the BSEC and accredited by the Bangladesh Bank. It provides the credit rating services for all type of exposure as well as entities. And it also has a research and advisory department which looks after the economic analysis, industry analysis, and all sort of business advisory services so that a business can improve its operation and efficiency. And one of the flagship program of the BDRL is the ESG analysis and rating. We also go for ESG analysis with a standard methodology so that companies can get the opportunity for improving their ESG parameters as well. And we have also the publications of different impact analysis reports and also SME Bangladesh series. And we also conducted some training sessions related with our expertise area, particularly in the financial statement analysis, financial planning and forecasting, and the risk analysis and risk management, also the business analysis and business strategy. The BDRL provides its credit rating services as the independent opinion and rating analysis by internationally trained analysts. Our analysts are continuously trained by the international top-notch credit rating as well as other like institutions. And it tried to explore the insights about the financial strategy of that particular entity. And our main purpose is to provide the independent opinion. In addition, we try to prepare our report and analysis so that our clients get the inputs for business decision making from our report. So as a whole, how the business will be improved is operation as well as a future operation. It is required the proper analysis based on which you will set your future business strategy as well. That's why business strategy analysis is one of our focus in our credit rating report as well. And the uniqueness of the BDRL is a global company. It has a very strong heritage and knowledge, resources, as well as legacy. It's a subsidiary of Dun & Bradstreet company. It's a highly qualified and international trained human resources. And we have a robust rating methodology. We try to continuously improve it in line with the international standard, but not without compromising the local parameters of the economy and business environment, and continuous research on economic and business environment so that our analyst as well as organization as a whole, we have the deeper understanding. And countrywide business network, we can reach to any corner of the country to visit and to give the services to our clients. And we try to find the truth from the data. That is our underlying motto. And we try to explore the better business insights so that business policymakers and the decision makers get the support for making better business decisions that will lead their better business growth. As a result, our commitment to the client and the economy is that we want to provide credible credit rating for their sustainable growth. And again, welcome to today's monthly webinar of the BDRL Economic Outlook of Bangladesh. This is, as we know that we have just crossed the half yearly. So in these cases, may I request Mr. Kamrul Bari to present the concept paper, summary of our analysis. Then we will listen from our renowned and noted panelists from today's program. Yeah, Mr. Kamrul Bari.
Thank you, Dr. Mamun Bhai, and Assalamu alaikum and very good evening to everyone. So it's quite a privilege to get an opportunity to talk on a platform like this, and it's always a gift to work with a prominent researcher and a gifted manager, and also a gifted leader, Dr. Mamun Bhai, and also all my esteemed colleagues. They have actually created an atmosphere through which we learn together and we gather a combined and comprehensive research work. And then basically we try and present that to basically share our insights, which has been collected through efforts, collective efforts, I must say. Well, so I hope that I'm audible. So am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Thank you. Thank you. Also, let me share my screen. Well, so I'm going to start the presentation, and because of some network issues, we have seen sometimes there are some lags. So I'd like to turn my camera off and share the PPT in full screen. Well, so is it visible?
Yeah, it can be visible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Well, so this is the topic, Economic Outlook of Bangladesh, half-yearly review. And my name is Mohammad Kamrul Bari. And I have been introduced, I must say, that quite overwhelmingly by my colleague, Samira. And now I'm going to basically go forward, and also by Dr. Mamun Bhai. And now we are going to move forward to the backdrop of the discussion here. So today, at first, before looking at different variables, where does the variables come from? We need to basically have a look at that. The concepts, the basic issues, basic ideas, and then we need to basically relate them with the individual numbers. So the first concept is the linear growth concept, which is given by Rostow. So I'm not going to go into the details of these concepts. I'm just going to touch some basic ideas. The Rostow, in this particular case, argued that economies must go through a number of developmental stages. And these developmental stages has been broken down into different parts. The first one is the traditional society. The second one is the pre-takeoff, then takeoff, then drive to maturity, and the stage of mass consumption. So in the traditional society, it's pretty primitive, and it starts basically with the agriculture and all, and then gradually it takes off. So after gradually it goes to the pre-takeoff stages, and then takeoff starts with let's say collective growth in different segments, different sectors of the economy. Then it moves further towards maturity, and finally mass consumption happens. So if we look at the stages, then Bangladesh can be defined to be here, the drive to maturity. So we already took off, the economy took off, and we are here. So Rostow argued that economies follow a logical sequence as well. So you see, like an economy cannot directly come to this stage of mass consumption directly from traditional society. It comes through the transformations, and gradually it moves from one stage to the another. So you cannot actually jump through stages. There is a sequence. Then come Harrod and Thoma. So they have basically addressed the aspect of savings and also the importance of savings and investment. So according to both of them, two determinants are there that determine the growth of a particular economy. The first one is the relationship between change in capital stock, that is investment. And the second one is the savings, which indicates actually how much an individual is saving. If saving is equal to investment, in that case, in an economy, we do not need any financial sector, financial intermediaries, or let's say banks. But unfortunately, they are not same. That is why we have these intermediaries present. So the main function of the financial sector is to ensure that funds flow from savers to the investors in the real assets at the earliest possible time, within the smallest and little level of effort, and obviously the least friction. That means almost a zero transaction cost or very low transaction cost. The Lewis model, it indicates that in 1955, they have basically given, Lewis model has been derived, and it basically divides the entire discussions into several sectors. Particularly, if we look at the two major sectors, then obviously, as indicated by this particular theory, away from the agriculture, the low productive labor are transferred to the high productive, from rural low productive sector to the urban high productive sector. So through this, actually, as you can see, the productivity increases, and gradually from the, you see, like from the primary sector, we go to the secondary sector, and then comes the tertiary sector, which is the service sector. Primary is the agriculture, the fishery, the mining, etc. Then secondary is basically the manufacturing in this particular case. And obviously the tertiary sectors are the service sectors. The most important issue is this one. Their work is still very relevant. So this is given back in 1955, the Lewis model, and then the Clark-Fisher model that talks about the tertiary sector was given in 1935, but still they're very relevant to our economies. So far, the variables that we got to understand which are affecting our economy and the performances are basically the investments, the savings, and also the stages and the different stages, different layers of, let's say, products and services that we produce and we offer. So, and the transformation that takes place from one stage to the another. So far, we have actually got ideas related to them. Then comes dependency, which is not quite effective at this particular point in time. It says that the nations appear to be, the richer nations, they appear to be at the expense of the poorer nation. It means increases in the wealth of the richer nations. So that happens because of the, you see, because of the expenses that are paid or costs that are paid by the poorer ones. In fact, we also see some issues of this present, or some, let's say, instances of this present in today's world as well. What is happening in, let's say, our world at this particular point in time? The developed economies, in order to control inflation, whatever policies they're implementing, obviously, those policies are taking away, let's say, resources, important resources out from our economies, specifically the emerging ones, and ultimately that goes to safety. And gradually, as we all understand, the costs, high costs are basically paid by these economies. But obviously, we are not also, we means, by we, I'm trying to say, the EMDs, or emerging and the developing economies. So we also try to devaluate our economy, our currency at a particular stage. We always want to keep it devalued so that we can keep our competitiveness intact. So that is also another issue. So this actually creates different kinds of war. So currency war, then now what we can see is the reverse currency war, etc., etc. So there are some sort of dependencies that we can still see. And obviously, as has been mentioned, some presence of this, you say, like wealth transfer instances are still there. But this is not applicable per se in today's world that much. But the new classical theory is very much applicable, and it is actually been adopted by both IMF and World Bank as soon as it is being developed. So it actually looks at different kinds of free market approaches, the free market approach, the public choice approach, free market, I must say free market environment as a whole, and the market-friendly approaches. So there are different dimensions of these discussions here, so I'm not going to go into the detail. The main idea here is that the organizations I'm talking about, the IMF and the World Bank, and also, let's say, the believers in this particular concept and this particular theory, they basically emphasize on market freedom. So free market is the ultimate concept of this particular theory. And there is a very limited role that the state play. And this is actually some sort of the middle one. The public choice approach is some sort of, you see, extreme view. So which says that government is always bad. They always lead to corruption and gradual confiscation of private property. Through corruption, they, you see, snatches away the private property. So this is also one approach. Another one is the market-friendly approach. This is a bit, I must say, a more appropriate or more apt from that particular dimension, instead of going for, let's say, an extent or a particular extreme direction. So this approach is more practical in nature. So it says that markets work, they sometimes fail to emerge, and a government has important role to compensate for three main market failures: missing markets, imperfect knowledge, and externalities. So government must pay and pay for the failure. So I'm going to talk about it a bit in a bit details. So when I'm going to touch some other areas. Then comes the new growth theory, in which the importance of knowledge is captured. So knowledge is seen as a key driver of economic development. So this is what drives the economic development. So that is the main understanding of this particular concept and the particular theory. Then comes the role of the public sector. Excuse me. The new growth theories, they argue that government should allocate resources to compensate for market failure. So whenever social capital is invested, means the relationship or networks among people, they're invested. So you know that resources get to be distorted. Resources may not be allocated properly for ensuring their best possible outcome. And it actually forces towards some sort of market failure. And in order to control those market failure, government needs to intervene and pay. For example, subsidies, then obviously new tax structures and all. Then public utilities and infrastructure. The accumulation of public capital, you see, it depends on the correct level of expenditure by the government. So in other words, you see, government needs to, first of all, government needs to pay for different kinds of support, specifically the energy, like the electricity, the gas, and the water. So on which some countries, some nations, they have monopolies, and sometimes governments also do have monopolies in different countries. However, if these utilities are undersupplied, then obviously problems occur. So organizations will not be able to run in full swing, and there will be under capacity available in the economies, in the country as a whole, and obviously the entire country is going to pay. So it is the responsibility of the government to make sure that they pay for this. And how much the private sector can capture the opportunities presented by an economy, it depends on the correct level of expenditure that is made by the government. So if government does not make adequate investment in these sectors or does not pay for these facilities, then obviously private sector cannot grow. So it also gives us an idea that energy is an important issue. We got the idea that knowledge is extremely important. We understood the issue that networks and you see connections among people and parties, they tend to distort the efficiency, or let's say effectiveness of allocation of resources and the process of allocation of resources. So, and obviously because of that, government needs to pay in terms of subsidies and others. Then comes property rights. So this is very important and interesting, that obviously if we invest in knowledge, then obviously it is very important that we have copyrights present over there. So intellectual property also needs to be protected, because this is a large source of earning. In absence of the formal property right, sometimes it is considered as the fundamental cause of poverty. So this is a qualitative aspect, obviously a policy aspect. It is found that in countries like ours, documentation is limited. So we don't have access to correct documents, and that actually lead to hidden economies, informal economies. Then we have the history of the country. So history of Bangladesh economy. So we basically look at Bangladesh economy from different dimensions, specifically 6 different dimensions. There is a type over here. So the first dimension is the growth dynamic, then the fiscal measure, money market, international trade, foreign debt, and inflation. This is the growth dynamic. Mainly the growth dynamic captures the GDP growth, and obviously the ingredients of the GDP, as we all know, the consumption, and obviously government expenditure, investment. So all these are basically the growth dimension, and as we can see over here. The first one, the GDP, has been moving sort of at an exponential pace, I must say, as the graph shows. It is not linear, but actually, as you can see, that it increases significantly. So it was as small as 6 billion only in 1972, and in 2022, it reached 465. So within a small period of time, within just 50 years, so our economy has expanded to by a tremendous degree and to a tremendous level. Then comes final consumption as a percentage of expenditure. As I have already mentioned while I was discussing some some concepts, economic concepts. If you can remember the Rostow, so the last stage is massive or mass consumption. So as we can see, we have not reached at that stage yet. So in certain economies, this figure is significantly high, but unfortunately, ours is not that high. So it is 74.66, but gradually we are moving there. Then export and import of goods and services as percentage of GDP. Exports are 17, imports are 17%, and exports are 10% of the GDP. Still, we are dependent on imports. We could not flourish our import substitute industries yet, or we could not grow them properly so that we can effectively use their services and products. Then comes gross capital formation of investments. As we can see, total investment, public and private, if we add them, it becomes 31.02%, and most of them actually comes from the public sector. So the excuse me. So the 31.02%, the private sector investment is sort of stagnant in this particular segment. If I'm not wrong, it's around 23%. Sorry, I mean, the majority it comes from actually the private sector, and the rest actually comes from the public sector. So 23 to 24%, if I'm not wrong, as far as I can recall. Then comes the sectoral GDP share. So the sectoral GDP share shows the stages of development. So if you can recall, so I have already talked about in previous concepts that you see the emergence of service sector is an indicator of development, isn't it? So at first, the primary sector contributes more to the economy, then comes the secondary sector, then comes the tertiary sector. So as we can see, at this particular point in time, 53% of total contribution comes from, total contribution to the GDP comes from basically the service sector. And the productions of the manufacturing sector is contributing 35%. Government has a target to take it to 40%. And the share of agriculture is gradually reducing, as we can see. Then the export of goods and services. So this is the total figure. I have already shown the percentages. So exports, as we can see, is also exponential, sort of exponentially increasing. Imports are also increasing in the same pace, and it is bound to happen because in our country, value addition is not that much. I mean, conversion probably happens only once. So from, let's say, intermediate to final, or in certain cases, in most of the cases, I must say that we mostly import the raw material from outside, and then we convert them to the finished product. Now, these are some of the positive reasons for which our economy has seen significant push or growth. The export incentive, it has basically promoted the exports, then access to low-cost fund. That was another major driver of the growth of our private sector as well as the economy as a whole. Then the duty-free, quota-free access or facilities as an LDC, which we have been enjoying, but it is not going to be present. So as far as I can recall, following 2026, because we have already graduated from LDC. The increase in purchasing power made the domestic market viable to tap for both local and foreign businesses. So this is an interesting one, as you can see, since the purchasing power of the people is increasing. So the domestic market players, they're investing more and more, and the foreign market players, they're also showing their interest to come here because their market to a certain degree is saturated. So they're interested to come here and obviously for selling their products, and at the same time to use the factors that we offer here. For example, let's say low-cost capital, availability, low-cost labor, availability of low-cost labor, but skilled. So that is obviously a factor, and the payment for factor payment for labor is wages, as we all know. So due to cheap wages, they come here in search for factor as well as for selling their products and services. Then comes the industrial policies, and obviously at the same time, the import and export policies. All these policies, they catalyze the process of development, specifically for the manufacturing sectors. Then emergence of private sector initiatives. It has seen significant increase in the recent past, following the establishment of democracy. So as we can see, if we just have a look at here, so democracy starts.
You have
pretty much here.
Mr. Kamrul Bari, you have last 5 minutes from your time quota.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, please wrap
Thank
up.
you. Yeah, sure. So right after the starting point, as we can see, of the democracy, and then it actually started to take off. Then you see another gift that we have is demographic dividend, gradual establishment of import substitutes, but we could not flourish it. I mean, the industry could not flourish that much. FDI inflow also increased, but obviously there has been some ups and downs altogether. Establishment of BIDA, then obviously OSS facilities, they have obviously played a vital role. One-stop services versus the one-stop services facility, then adoption of technology and emergence of universities. It offered skilled laborers to the market. Technology improved efficiency and all. So these are some of the challenges. So heavy reliance on the RMG, very low trade openness. So this is a problem for the group. Access to foreign financing is yet a big concern. We cannot, let's say, take as much loan as we want. And obviously the Forex reserve is also an important issue in this particular case. That poses also some sort of, or some level of threats. Then most of the investments are still being made by the public sector, by the private sector. So there is a trade reserve. Well, so Russia and Ukraine, so public sector investment in this particular case is public sector investment is still need to be there, because as you can remember, the public sector must pay for, you see, like basic infrastructure. They must pay for the electricity. They must pay for, let's say, the energy, gas, and everything. So that's the energy, right? The Russia-Ukraine war, that actually has some sort of a negative impact on the economic development of the country, and obviously a negative outlook in future. Then fluctuations in the exchange rate, USD crisis, high import tariff. We have a significant import tariff, LC opening restrictions. Obviously, there are some reasons for which it was put in place, but gradually it has to go. Then likely removal of the subsidies in future also has to go. Then whatsoever unavailability is going to be costly, or it's a problematic for certain sector. Then we do not participate in the global value chain that much, so that is also another issue, another concern. We need to address them. FTAs, PTAs they're not properly effective yet in Bangladesh. So if we look at the practical scenario, so RTAs like SAFTA is not that much effective in this country. Pass-through effect of policies from the developed economies, that also put ourselves in trouble. Food inflation is another issue, high inflationary scenario, reduced exports order that we have seen actually in the recent past. So all these are some of the challenges that we are facing at this particular point in time. Now, in short, our growth is persistent. It put us on the among the top 35 nations of the world. We are 35th. We are going to become the 20th largest nation by 2037, and we are already the second largest in the region. I must say that the growth potential and outlook is extraordinary, provided that those challenges are tackled. As I've already mentioned. Then the fiscal measures. So these are the fiscal measures. The national budget, it has also shown a gradual increase, and it is bound to happen because to support development, obviously government need to spend, but the problem area is the tax GDP ratio. It has gradually, as we can see, it has gradually fallen. So it has to be improved, it has to be increased. Otherwise, there will be some challenges emerging from this particular area. So low tax to GDP ratio is a threat. It must be increased. A complete overhaul in the taxation system is mandatory. However, so obviously we have seen that very recently steps have been taken to introduce the new IT Act in 2023, Income Tax Act of 2023, but there also has to be several other reforms that we need to basically ensure in this particular segment, specifically automation, and also in other areas, like making the process simpler and the laws more applicable. The country policy institutional assessment or CPIA score of World Bank of Bangladesh is 3.5 out of 6, so which is moderate, and it is similar to India. So we are second in the region. First is Bhutan. So from this information, we can say that obviously our presented information, at the same time, the challenges that I have talked about, the regulatory aspects that we have talked about, that also supports this assessment. I mean, our performance in this particular region or particular area of economy is moderate. Then foreign debt, as we can see, the foreign debt gradually increased over the year. And obviously another interesting issue is the grant. The grant gradually decreased and probably it will reach nil. So once we graduate from NDC effectively after 2026, then total debt to GDP ratio, as we can see, the debt to GDP ratio is well below 40%. So this is not a concern for us. And the external debt to GDP ratio is well within reach. I mean, well within the prudent target, or below the prudent target, I must say, 11.87%, so not a challenge yet. Debt servicing is gradually rising, but it's not a challenge yet because 3.30 is the total debt servicing requirement in $1 billion, including the principal and interest payment till 2021, which is not much. Then the per capita GNI is 2570, so this is a tremendous area of development for this country. So we have reduced poverty significantly, so that is also another achievement that we are basically getting from the development of the economy. Then foreign direct investments and the net inflows. Excuse me. So the FDI has been, you see, like fluctuating, but there was sort of, I must say, there's sort of a positive trend. But then there was a fall, obviously, during 2014 to 2016. But there is also another pretty obvious fall because of the COVID, and it is gradually recovering at this particular point in time. Total debt service is only around 1.30% of total GNI, which is also a very good indicator. So as far as our capacity to repay long-term debt is concerned. So this is not a major area for concern for this country. Remittances have also been going up. Then total reserves have also been going up. So obviously, in the recent times, we saw some problems, and that I have already mentioned was mainly due to several externalities. Then foreign direct investments. So as we can see, foreign direct investment is particularly at 1.39 billion. It has to be increased. And total reserves as percentage of total external debt is also very small, only 50.49%. So which is pretty low compared to many developed economies. So overall, as far as the foreign debt is concerned, we can say that the debt level is acceptable. Servicing capacity is very good, is excellent. However, there are several issues like the drivers of reserve. So that is not performing that good. So you see, like in the recent time, we will see, in the recent time, you see the FDI has not increased as much as we wanted it to increase. Then there are obviously some positive tone in the remittance inflow, and sometimes we get negative remittance inflows, I mean, reduction of remittance inflows as well. So which poses threat. So remittance has to increase. So if the remittance inflow increases, if we get, let's say, steady FDI inflow from different countries coming in, then obviously we will be in a better shape. Our performance is moderate in this particular area. So then international trade. So trade openness, as we can see, is around 27.72%. So our openness was higher in 2012, but gradually it has decreased for several reasons. So policies are trying to give it a positive push, but obviously the applicability and the implementation of the policies are also a big concern. And that has been, this concern has been presented in different speeches, which are given by the government officials as well, high-level government officials. Then exports of goods and services, so it reduced to, let's say, approximately 10.6% of GDP. So obviously GDP growth was also another big reason, but the main problem here, I must say, is this one. So this has to be revised. Our city is approximately on an average 69.93% because of several thousand percentage of, let's say, cities in certain areas. In total, the tax that we need to pay for international trade is approximately, on an average, total of individual average number. So on an average, the total payment is 62.52%, which is significantly higher if we compare to China, Vietnam, Thailand, India, etc. So this must come down. It must reduce. Obviously, there has to be a significant level of research conducted on this particular issue, because there is a concern that if we reduce this city, or let's say the taxes, then there will be impact on revenue earnings. So that is also another area of concern. So research has to be conducted. I saw one World Bank research, and when that was disseminated, I found it was pretty interesting. They argued, the researchers, they argued that actually due to the reduction of the tariff, overall level of trade is going to increase, and different additional layer of earnings is going to be received. So instead of, let's say, going down, the revenue earning is going to go up. But obviously, we need several dimensions of research in this particular context. So at this point in time, in terms of, let's say, international trade or trade openness, our performance is moderate. If we look at inflation, we did pretty well. We did pretty well after 2015, but definitely we paid a higher price due to different happenings, as I've already mentioned, mostly externalities in the recent time. And also there were some reasons. There are some policy issues. I'm also going to talk about that in a little bit. The domestic credit to private sector, as we can see, there was a steady growth of domestic sector credit, but still the inflation did not grow much. So that indicates that we very prudently managed the economy as a whole. Interest rate spread came down to only 2.28%, and still there is significant survival and it's a good amount of profit which has been earned by banks. So it is obviously tremendous. The deposit interest rate has had to go down because of the 9/6 policies and all. But unfortunately, I'm not in favor of this policy because I do not think that this kind of caps can actually, you see, like help the economy. The adjustment does not happen. So as I've already mentioned, that there are some policy issues. If we look at the monetary policy played very crucial role in the economic growth in recent past. But I must say that in the recent times, the monetary policies those are offered have got several flaws. If we look at the, let's say, main idea of the policy itself, that idea and the spirit of the policy is not also appropriate for this particular point in time. The policy stance of Bangladesh Bank. So the risk arising from inflation at this point in time is extremely high. Our performance was extremely good beforehand. It was within 5%, which is appropriate for economies like ours. But in the recent past, our performance is really poor. Now the money market. So this is emerging to be the biggest problem area at this point in time. So there has been found to be some liquidity crunch, and overnight call money rate jumped to 7%. If I'm not wrong, from 2.5% a year ago. So that was between 2.5 to somewhere between 2.5 to 3.5, within that region. From that, we have actually come to 7%, as high as 7%. So obviously there is some liquidity problem, and this liquidity problem is also supposed to happen given the inflationary scenario and all. But obviously, if we look at the monetary policy, then the money supply growth that has been assumed in that particular policy also, I think, needs a detailed look. So anyway, so that's pretty much it. So as far as the money market performance is concerned, I must say that this is going to be a problem in the recent time, but may not be a problem going forward when the inflation comes down, but that needs policy intervention. Recent development, imports increased in last year, between July to November, whatever, sorry, this is 21, this should be 21, this is 22. In 21, $33.69 billion of imports we have seen, and it increased to 35.15 in July to November. Oh, sorry, no, this is fiscal year, I'm sorry. So this is fiscal year from July 22 to July 23. So I'm sorry. So you say sometimes the calendar year and the fiscal year mix up, it creates some sort of difficulties. Well, anyway, so this is for fiscal year 22. That means July 21 to November 21. Whatever was our import increased despite the restrictions. So I don't think that the restriction is working that much. Well, then, so I don't think that it should be kept in place. Gradually, it needs to be reduced or eliminated. Then exports. So at this point in time, it is to 24.7, and it has reached 1 year back. It was 24.7 within the last 6 months of the calendar year 21. In the last 6 months of calendar year 22 or fiscal year 23, the first half of fiscal year 23, we see that it is 27.31 billion. So there is a significant jump in exports. So it is obviously good. But obviously, as we have discussed earlier, so there are some issues regarding the orders and all. Then current account balance, it was highly negative, and the negative value of that is reducing, which is also a good sign. Gross forex reserve, it has seen a decline, but today I saw a news that Bangladesh Bank prediction says probably it is going to be somewhere around 37.7 billion, as far as I can recall, within June. And tax revenue, so tax revenue was 100,000 crore last year. In the last 6 months of the first half of the fiscal year, it has significantly increased the tax collection. It has increased by 15% approximately, as you can see. Then remittance inflow, it has also increased significantly, but we need to make sure that it remains consistently on an upward trend. Then debt servicing, it is pretty much same. So it's not changing much, which will obviously see an increase in few years, but that is also not going to be significantly high. Total gross FDI inflow, the highest level of FDI comes from the United States, so which is 27%. And the other major countries are, as you can see, China, Korea, United Kingdom, Singapore. This is the amount and the inflation, as I was talking about. So it increased significantly, and now it has reduced to 8.71. Then LC opening and settlement. So as we can see, the LC opening, it has gone down for obvious reasons, as I've already mentioned, and settlement increased. So it indicates, because of obviously there was some deferrals, we already knew about that. The payment has been settled, so there was some deference for the deferred payments, I must say. Due to that, there was actually significantly higher. Then the LC settlement growth, as you can see, was significantly high. So it saw a 31.56% growth. So this is actually creating some sort of a tightness in liquidity of Forex reserve. Then composition of major deposits. So as you can see, the major deposit items are fixed deposit right at this moment. So according to the latest report of Bangladesh Bank, 43 or 44% of total deposit actually comes from fixed deposits. It was only 43% in June. And the next higher item is the savings deposit. So these two are the major drivers of deposits. So savings and investments, I have already discussed, they play a major role, as we already learned earlier, or we saw earlier, I would say. So we all already know. Anyway, so this is the deposit trend. As you can see, the fixed deposit trend, it saw a negative percentage of growth. So indicating there is decline in fixed deposit. There's also decline in savings deposit, the major sources of savings. So obviously, since savings are going down, so availability of fund for future investment or future, let's say, loan is going to be smaller. The change in composition of advances by economic purposes. So this actually offers you an idea about what kind of loan is given to which particular sector. So 34.02% of total loan in June 22 was given in the trade and commerce, and it has increased to 35% in September. So it almost remains similar. In the industrial sector, the advances declined a bit. From 41%, it declined to 39%. Still, it is pretty similar. Loans to the SME segments or SME sectors, if we have a look, large industries, most of the loans of the large industries go to the term loan section. On the contrary, for the SMEs, most of the loans go to the working capital segment or for working capital financing. These are bank credits, which are made in different items, bank deposits and credits. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go through all of them. So this is already presented, so you can have a look. So this is pretty self-explanatory. And then deposit and lending rates, this is interesting. So as I've said, that there was a 9/6 policy in place, but the weighted average deposit rate was never even closer to 6%, and the lending rate was never closer to 9%. So you see, so I don't think it was effective anymore. And another interesting thing is the reduction of spread. So reduction spread actually reduced to 2.96 in November 2022. So overall performance, I must say, is of the economy is obviously in terms of export earnings, in terms of let's say the growths that we are expecting to receive. Also, the depletion of forex reserve did not happen at a pace we expected. Then the debt servicing reduced, tax revenue increased, remittances increased. So there is a sort of a mixed signal, but positive signals are more. Unfortunately, the negative signals are coming from external factors, specifically the developed economies. So if they continue their, let's say, increases in interest rate, obviously, there is a very high possibility that dollars are going to flow out of the country. And obviously from economies like ours, it may put us in more trouble. And also another interesting issue is foreign exchange management, how we are going to manage it. That also has a significant impact on the forex reserve. So once we can prudently tackle inflation and the issues of forex reserve, and they are also linked to a certain degree because policies related to interest rate also influences it. So if the interest rate goes up, interest rate differentials, as we understand, if it increases, so obviously it may attract more foreign currency gradually in future, since we are not expecting there will be a significant hikes in interest in the developed economies in the near future. Well, so I must say that in medium term, our performance is likely to be moderate, and it is going to be obviously lower than previous year because government has also reduced it. Our forecast also says that there will be a reduction of growth, but it is not going to be significantly problematic for countries like ours, specifically for our country, I must say. We will be able to tackle, provided that there is ample policy support in the right direction. So that's pretty much it. Thank you. And obviously the other prominent panelists for today's session, they will actually shed light on these areas, some of the areas which are significantly
Thank you,
important.
Mr. Kamrut Bari.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing the concept paper for today's session. In fact, this is our robust research paper. It will be also like published as our working papers of the BDRL and will be available in our website as well. So we, as a credit rating company, as well as a subsidiary of the global knowledge-based company like Dun & Bradstreet, we try to follow up each and every indicators very deeply and independently so that we can get deeper understanding about the movement of the economic variables. As the study presented, it as a whole, it demonstrates that we have the very strong and persistent growth dynamic. In addition, in spite of some global challenges and unprecedented challenges like post-COVID impact, Ukraine and Russia war, and inflationary global trend, as well as the dollar volatility and increasing the interest rate in US Treasury. So combinedly, all these factors have created some challenges for us. However, in terms of our debt repayment capability and its history, gives us some comfort. In spite of that, we can see that there are a lot of chances to improve in the financial sector and in terms of the parameters related with the banking industry. So in that respect, we are very much privileged to have an eminent bankers, that is Obaidul, and FCMA is also a professional cost and management accountants. So we'd like to listen from him that like last half of the year has been completed with all these sort of global as well as the local challenges. Particularly as we know that governance, corporate governance is one of the major challenges of the banking sector as well as other sector to attract more FDI as well. So as a from the banker point of view, as a banker, how do you evaluate the performance of Bangladesh economy in the last 6 months in spite of all the challenges. Sir Ubaidullah. Yeah.
Well, Bhavan bhai, I'll go.
And
Bhavan
with
bhai,
we can listen you. Yeah.
okay, okay. Let me share my screen first. Well,
Yeah, we can see your screen.
the panelist and the author, I'm working Dhaka Bank as vice president. So since I'm not a researcher like Bari Bhai or academician, so I will remaining in the field during this crucial time. Last 6 months we have passed through, and also I will share the feedback I have received from my customers who are actually facing the music. So let's start. Bangladesh began 2022 with high hopes of overcoming the coronavirus pandemic and regaining its footing as a developing nation. However, as the year progressed, the global economic climate took a turn for the worse. The invasion of Ukraine by Russia and the subsequent imposition of Western sanctions forced the international fuel market and commodity market to skyrocket. The pressure on imports continued to mount, and although export rose to new heights, they were not enough to offset the impact of the shortfall in the balance of payment. Many banks of Bangladesh were forced to limit the opening of letters of credit, including those of importing daily necessities due to the daily necessities, and also some industrial raw materials other than RMG sector due to the ongoing foreign currency crisis. Even with dollars coming in from remittances and export earnings, the banks were unable to pay their import payment obligations and foreign debts of their customers. Entrepreneurs and businessmen also held back on new initiatives for setting up industries and expanding their business. Despite different initiatives from the government and Bangladesh Bank, the nation's economy continues to be affected by the ongoing forex crisis, which some experts attribute to the Ukraine war and mismanagement in the banking sector. The banking sector has also faced turmoil with the massive increase in non-performing loans over the past decade. So first of all, I will look back to the last 6 months, some unprecedented events we have seen in last 6 months, which we have never seen before. So first, I will focus on how the Ukraine war impacted on the economy as well as the banking sector of Bangladesh. Uh, since inception of the invasion, we have observed massive increase in the prices of imported commodities like petroleum, edible oils, wheat, etc. mainly, and all other products which we need to import from abroad. So this causes high inflation and lowering the purchasing power of the people. So that reduces savings of the people and also installment repayment capacity. Thus, reduces the bank's deposit and further loan repayment capacity of the banks. So once inflation and purchasing prices of commodities in, increase, then people have to first priority is to maintain his family first. So his same income he has to leave his family first. Then so he has his savings is reduced. Who from salary income, the people who can save some money per month earlier, they cannot save, and so bank deposit reduces, and those who run in at par per month, who cannot run their from the bank account, thus bank savings also reduces over the last 6 months. Then we have seen the major problem is that we have observed unprecedented unprecedented dollar crisis in last 6 months. The foreign currency reserve reduced to USD 32 a year ago. It will be further reduced to USD 24.20 billion if calculated as per IMF condition. With this reserve, we are capable to meet import liability of 3 to 4 months only. Banks, due to this dollar crisis, banks are forced to reduce the LC opening and in some cases decline to open LC. So we are, since beginning of the crisis, when we face the dollar crisis first, we have first of all Bangladesh Bank given the private commercial banks or commercial banks some support to meet up import liability from the reserve. But once the reserve is gradually declined quickly, then at one stage Bangladesh Bank declined to support the commercial banks and advise commercial banks to manage the funds from their own sources. So banks have to force and enforce rationing in opening the LC, and the export sector are getting the priority. So for RMG sector, we are providing all raw material LC, but no capital machineries LC are permitted in this during this period. So banks are also facing difficulties in settlement of import bills, and you will be here that some foreign supplier restrict unloading of imported goods at the Chittagong port due to non-payment of import bills. Usually, import payments are made within 5 days of receiving the documents, but goods are coming at a later stage. But as banks are failed to make payment of the import bills, and ships arrived at later stage, so the supplier ordered the ship not to release goods, and the ships are standing at the port, and the importer also facing some demurrages here. Then this dollar crisis also reduces import of necessary commodities, that also force the increase in prices of those commodities, and that also lead to inflation. Then due to this dollar crisis, that force the bank to reduce import of capital machineries, that reduces industrial growth and also reduces employment generation in the country. So Banks also reduce import of industrial raw material in non-RMG sector that disruption in production. If the situation continues, many factories will be forced to declare layoff, and that will lead to another unemployment situation. Then in 2022, we have also seen an unprecedented inflation due to Ukraine war and massive 23% devaluation of Taka over USD. Prices of all commodities goes up, and massive hike in fuel price increase the transport cost and escalate the prices of all commodities again. As a result, inflation reached new height of 9.52% in August 2022. Then we have also seen highest increase in NPL in 2022. Banking sector experienced highest growth in NPL in 2022 since its independence. NPL stood at 1,34,000 crore in September 2022, which is 32.86% higher than previous year. This 1,34,000 crore NPL in September 2022, we have not yet received the December figure, but as usual, banks reschedule some classified loan in December. So it will definitely be reduced in December with the regularization of some classified NPL through rescheduling. Bank also face difficulties by some newspaper reporting of few loan scams. Like some loan scam reported in mainstream media, newspapers, TV, and also social media adversely affected the banking sector that create anxiety among the depositors. Depositors rush to the banks to withdraw their money, and those banks face severe liquidity, and they rush to Bangladesh Bank as the lender of last resort. So Bangladesh Bank has to extend emergency fund support to those banks by lending Taka 18,790 crore in December 2022. Then the export growth, among all these negative news, one positive we can find in our export sector. Export in 2022 recorded new height of USD 52.08 billion and also recorded 17.32% growth compared to 2021. So these are the few perspectives of 2022. Now I will focus on the first half of 2020, how we can overcome these and how we are predicting the 2023 and way forward. So this dollar crisis problem we first faced back in June 2022. Initially, we thought that the situation will be normal within 3-4 months by October 2022, but we are wrong. The crisis escalates gradually, and now it's difficult to predict when the crisis will end and will be able to open LCs as before. Now, how to overcome or solve this problem of dollar crisis? Input restriction initially imposed by Bangladesh Bank or banks forced to restrict import is not a solution for long term. We have to find ways to increase our supply of dollars to resolve the crisis. There are two main sources: increase in export and remittances. Besides attracting FDI can also be another solution, and we hope IMF loan once start this releasing, this loan may also release the pressure a bit. Remittances, we are expecting a big surge in remittances in 2023 as 11 lakh new workers went abroad for jobs in 2022, highest number since independence. Still, we have a lot to do in this sector. We are mainly sending unskilled workers abroad and they are earning very low wages. As a result, 30 million expatriate remit only USD 21, that is USD 1,617 only per worker per year. That is very low. For remittances, there is some few things to discuss more. That is the remittances sent from mainly from the unskilled by the unskilled workers from the Middle East and Italy. So these workers are sending their hard-earned money to the country, but the expatriate, those are working in developed countries like Australia. They're gradually settling over there, and initially they send remittances for their families here, and gradually they're also taking their families there, and all once their previous generation, I mean parents are expired, then they have no motivation to send remittances in Bangladesh. So we have to look forward, the policymakers, Bangladesh Bank can give the expatriate some motivation. Expatriate who are working in the developed nation, if we can give them some motivation, that some investment opportunities in Bangladesh, so they can remit their money in Bangladesh. Thus, we can increase our remittances. The export, we are happy with the record export in 2022. For the first time, it passed USD 50 billion mark, but the 17.32% growth over 2021 is mainly due to increase in price, not in quantity. Due to the overall global economic condition, prices of raw materials increase and thus increase the export value as consequence. There is no good news for export in 2023. Oven sector going slow all over 2022 and expecting the same fate in 2023. Knit and sweater sector experienced very good growth in 2022 and expecting the same in 2023, but fearing an upcoming recession in Europe and America due to the continued Ukraine war, buyers are slowed down placing the orders. So still, we are hopeful that export will continue, but if oven and sector contribute more like before, then it will go a little bit higher than 2022. In 2023, as bank NPL, if the current situation of dollar crisis and Ukraine war, commodity price rise are continuing, then there are reasonable possibility that the NPL in the bank. For trading, we could not import trading items, high-end products like vehicle, electronics, processed foods, clothing, ready-made garments, high-end ready-made garments, for example. So those people who are involved in trading of these items, they could not import their products, and disruption in their supply chain, disruption in business cycle, as well as cash flow reduces, there is a chance of inflation, chance of non-performing loan in that segment. Manufacturing, banks could not support importing of raw materials for non-RMG sector, then they could not continue their production cycle, and but they have to pay for wages and overhead. The disruption of business cycle and cash flow that reduces loan repayment capacity of those manufacturer, and their loans are expected to be classified or become NPL if they could not manage fund from other sources. Then the inflation affected people of all strata of the society, that reduces the family income, but the income not increase accordingly. So loan repayment capacity of the individual borrower of our retail segment decreases, and since they have to back up their families first, they have to meet up their family expenditure, so they could not repay their installments with the same income with inflated price. So we'll face increase in NPL in retail segment too. Besides, some possibility of NPL will arise due to the policy support loans, which Bangladesh Bank given some policy support during the COVID-19 pandemic in the form of installment deferrals, though, and given some stimulus loans also. Those loans in 2023 and 22, some loans become due 22, and it will also, some loans will be due in 2023. So if this situation continues, then business those state loans, and there is a possibility that these loans will also become classified in 2023. Then the issue of Ukraine war. It is difficult to predict when the war will end, but since it already passed one, almost we are going to reach 1 year in February, but since its beginning, we're thinking that it will 1 month or 3 months, then 6 months. But as of now, we cannot predict when this war will end. It affecting not only Bangladesh, all the developing or underdeveloped nations of the world, besides developing countries also facing higher inflation and interest rate rise. So we cannot predict about the end of the, we can assume that there are, at this stage, there are three possible scenario can be happen: a ceasefire, or retreat by either party, or continuation of the war for longer period on limited scale. If the permanent ceasefire can be ensured, then overall global economic situation will be improved, and we may get the benefit of the reduced fuel and commodity prices. But if it continues for longer period, then there is a possibility that a recession will be there in developed nations like USA and Europe, then our export orders will be reduced and we'll facing more dollar crisis in the days to come. So we're hoping some good sense will come to the people engaged in this war and they decide for a ceasefire. And the Western world have some role here. They can, without giving the weapons, they can call the both parties and sit for a ceasefire. That we only can hope. In conclusion, I can say that it's true that challenges posed by Russia-Ukraine war and the dollar crisis and other issues have had a negative impact on the banking sector and the economy of Bangladesh as a whole. It's true that the challenges posed by Russia-Ukraine war and other issues have had a negative impact on the banking sector and the economy of Bangladesh as a whole. But it's also important to remember that Bangladesh has a history of resilience and resourcefulness in the face of adversity. The country has a robust and dynamic economy, and its people are known for their determination soon. Thank you very much for your patience hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Ubaidullah, FCMA, for your very holistic insights about the banking issues, particularly one of the areas you cover, which I really like much, that what are the possible challenges we need to address, especially more focus, that is the NPL issues, which is, we all know that this is one of our challenges, and due to the upcoming like external as well as internal factors, the NPL position is going to be deteriorated, and I believe that policymakers will come up with the measures so that the NPL position can be improved and can give some buffer to our economy. So in this respect, I would like to invite the Dr. Nazmul Saadat Khan, economist, World Bank, for sharing his thoughts about how the economy, Bangladesh economy performs, and if he shares some lights on that, what are the possible area our policymakers should look into and business people should consider for setting their strategy. Yes, Dr. Nazmus.
Okay, so thank you very much, Dr. Mamun, and also Kamul Bhai for your initial remarks. And first of all, thank you to BDRAL for organizing this webinar and also inviting me. Sorry, I don't have any slides, but I'd like to go through some of the things that was already mentioned, I think already by Kamul Bhai and then by Mr. Ubaidullah, but I would mostly like to focus on the short-term scenarios that the Bangladesh is facing at the moment, and probably the link between the different sectors and what are the policy options we have going forward. So as you know, I mean, for Bangladesh, of course, Bangladesh for a long period of time has been blessed with a very stable macroeconomic conditions. At least for the last 2 decades, we know that there weren't any major crises in terms of macroeconomic stability. Even we went through the 2007 and 8 global financial crisis without much of a problem. But I think after a long period of time now, we are having, I will not say a crisis, yet, but obviously some weaknesses in our macroeconomic system that I think we need to take care of. I think the main problem we have is, of course, as other speakers spoke previously, is on the external sector. And the problem started, I would not say it started, but it kind of accelerated after the war in Ukraine. When it started with the imports, when the import cost suddenly went up due to rise in the commodity prices. But actually imports were actually even increasing even before the even the war in Ukraine. That was partly because of the pent-up demand that we saw coming following the COVID crisis. So after the lockdown, when the lockdown were removed, there was a sudden jump in consumption, which created this excess demand, which was fueling additional imports and inflation. But that kind of increased dramatically after the war in Ukraine. And as a result, we saw this huge trade deficit, and which of course then led to a record current account deficit. And part of it is, of course, the story is, of remittances also, I think, important here. And we saw a stark difference between fiscal year 2021 and fiscal year 2022. So in 21, there was this COVID restrictions, and as a result, what happened is that all the illegal channels for transferring remittance money kind of became problematic. So it didn't work. So in many cases, the only options our non-resident Bangladeshis had were to send the money through official channels. As a result, we saw a record high remittance growth in fiscal year 21, which kind of fueled a record balance of payment surplus at the end. But starting in FY22, when the COVID restrictions were removed and this illegal channel started to emerge, so as a result, we saw a fall in remittances despite a growing number of people going outside for work. So there is this big difference. This is a puzzle that we see, that though there's the number of people going abroad is increasing continuously, but that is not reflected in the remittance inflow that we are seeing. And also part of the reason is, of course, the difference between the exchange rate differentials. What we have, the official exchange rate from the banking sector and what you get if you transfer through Hundi and other unofficial channels. The difference is much larger today compared to what we had previously. So even after factoring in the incentive that the government is providing, it is more profitable for the people to send money through unofficial channels. So that's actually one of the reasons that that is kind of still persistent, is fueling the current account deficit. And another difference, I think, between fiscal year 21 and 22 is that we have seen the financial, which kind of comprises of the FDI, the portfolio investment, and other short and long-term loans that comes from the donors. We always had a surplus in financial account balance for a long period of time. And for the first time, I think in this fiscal year, in the last 2 months, we have seen a deficit in the financial account balance. So even we have seen like the imports growth is slowing down from over 50% in some months in previous fiscal year to now we have, I think it's below 10%. Exports are also strong. Remittances are kind of rebounding, but still weak. But yet the overall balance of payment is still in a large deficit, is because the financial account balance is kind of shrinking. So that's another worry I think we also need to look into, rather than only focusing on the exports and imports. And I think some of the support that is coming from IMF and World Bank and other donors in upcoming months will probably help this financial account to come into a surplus, but we still have a lot of deficit to cover. So as a result, what happened, we all know that the reserves from a record high of about 48 billion, it kind of started to fall very quickly. And one of the worries that not all of these reserves are are liquid. Some part of it is assigned to different facilities. For example, the Export Development Fund, which is about like 7 billion or so. So as a result, I mean, though I don't think we are not in a crisis situation like Sri Lanka or Pakistan, but we need to be very careful so that it does not spill over to other sectors. But we have already seen, like from the external sector, we have starting to see problems in other sectors as well. For example, inflation, of course, this is another variable which was very stable for a few years, but now it has started to rise again. And there were initially, as I said, there was some demand pull factors as well when the demand went up after COVID. But then after, I think the cost push factor was more prominent when the prices of imported goods went up, and also after the increase in fuel prices in November, which translated into higher transportation cost and overall inflation spillover throughout the sector. Yes, and of course, we don't know the real number of inflation. There is a lot of doubts about the actual inflation figure. The way the BBS computes CPI, they use a base year of 2005 and 6. And the ways they assign to different items, which is based on a household and expenditure survey of, I think, 2007 or something, but they're not adapting it to the recent household and expenditure survey. So it is not actually reflecting the actual consumption pattern of the consumers. And as you probably know, different organizations, for example, SANEM, they did a research which actually found that the actual inflation is much higher. More recently, Consumers Association of Bangladesh also did a study which found that inflation in Dhaka is actually above 11%. So there is a lot of doubt about the actual inflation figure as well. And one of the worst part of inflation is that it affects the poorer people disproportionately to the richer people. So for a country like Bangladesh, I think it's important to be careful about rising inflation. So the government took several measures. Of course, they tried to increase the policy rate or the repo rate, which I mean, almost all countries did throughout the world to tame inflation. But for Bangladesh, it was kind of ineffective because of the lending and savings rate cap which existed in the system. As a result, I think it kind of failed to pull down the aggregate demand, which, like the usual, the monetary policy is usually how the monetary policy works in other countries. But it's not for Bangladesh. It's slightly different. And as a result, what we're seeing in the monetary sector is, of course, I think it was already mentioned earlier, the shrinkage in the liquidity in the banking system. Due to high inflation, the people, I mean, the savings rate are falling. That's one reason people are not depositing their money. The other is, of course, I think what Mr. Obaidullah mentioned, there was this panic at one point that the economy is falling down. So a lot of people withdrew cash that was due to panic. And of course, since the real interest rate is now negative, there is a much more incentive for people to save or put money in the banking system. And of course, the other reason is that the Bangladesh Bank has been selling US dollar in record amounts, which means that they're pulling the liquidity from the banking system. So as a result, this is from an excess surplus, there is now a deficit or a shrinkage in the liquidity in the banking system, which is kind of affecting investment and other policies. And of course, there are the existing vulnerability in the financial sector. The NPL issue, of course, that was discussed earlier. We actually don't know what the NPL is. There are the numbers that the Bangladesh Bank provides, but the definition of NPL has changed over the period, and it's not actually similar to what the international practices that we have in other countries. So it's much more relaxed. And also there is this moratorium going on. The businesses are allowed to defer their payments. As a result, we actually don't know how much the NPL is. I think we will get a much clearer picture once all the moratorium is withdrawn, and the businesses will actually have to pay back their loans that they took throughout fiscal year 20 and 21. So, and this is, of course, spilling over to the fiscal sector as well. In the fiscal sector, I think this is one area where we had a stability for a long amount of time. Our fiscal deficit was within 5% of GDP. But I think on the expenditure side, there is a worry on the subsidy. As a result, we saw this, this rise in energy prices in recent times. But we actually don't know what is the size of the subsidy that the government is actually going to pay in this fiscal year. So there is some data issues as well. We don't get a very clear picture from BPC and Petrobangla and other organizations and BPDP on what's the size of the subsidy that the government needs to pay. And we have seen, I mean, we don't have a very updated expenditure data. I think from Finance Division, only 2 months data is available for this fiscal year. And that clearly shows that capital expenditure growth is actually negative, which is very uncommon for Bangladesh. So the policy that the government is taking on reducing capital spending and deferring some of the low priority projects, that is now reflecting in the data. And of course, on the deficit, I'm not sure whether it might be still within the range of 5% of GDP because the expenditure is falling. But the deficit financing is also another issue because the Bangladesh mostly finance through banking channels and non-banking channels, and the main instrument in the non-banking sector is the National Savings Certificate. And the net sale of National Savings Certificate has been falling in recent times due to several factors. One is, there is more stringent regulations. There are some additional rules that the consumers need to follow. So that is discouraging them to buy more NSCs. And also because of the high inflation, a lot of people are also now liquidating their previous NSCs. So as a result, that source of borrowing money is shrinking. As a result, the government is borrowing more from the banking channel, which is again creating, exacerbating the liquidity crisis. And also, they are borrowing more from the Bangladesh Bank, which is, which didn't really happen previously that much. The borrowing from the central bank has gone up tremendously, and that also has an effect on inflation. So in terms of outlook, I think going forward, we expect the inflation to remain high. That is because of the recent increase in gas prices, and also maybe a rise in electricity price, and also there was this spike in domestic fuel prices in November. All this will have an effect on inflation, even if the global commodity prices goes down. We are currently seeing the prices going down a bit, but I think the domestic prices will remain high in this fiscal year. And as a result, what can happen is it can affect the private consumption. And as we know, the private consumption is the largest fraction of the overall GDP. If you see from the demand side, it's almost over 70% of GDP. So that will shrink, and that will have an impact on the GDP. So GDP growth is, of course, we are expecting it to slow down, but it will still be positive, and it will, I guess, still be pretty strong. And of course, and also the government on the investment side, government investment is expected to go down because the government is cutting on capital imports and also some of their development projects, lower priority development projects. The industrial growth is likely to fall because of the energy crisis, and we don't know how long this crisis will last. And as a result, there is this uncertainty, which of course then feeds into private investment overall. So there is a kind of negative environment that is going that is currently present in the country, and we expect that will continue at least in this fiscal year, but hopefully it will start to improve from the next fiscal year. And on the external side, there is a risk that the export has been resilient so far, but it might weaken a bit if the major exporting countries fall into recessions, which is a quite likely scenario at the moment. I think the key would be to how we can attract more remittances. If we can reduce the difference between the exchange and the exchange rates and encourage more remittances to formal channels, I think that will really help to boost the external sector and the overall macroeconomic stability. So in terms of policy options, what the government can do going forward, I think the government already took some good measures which are kind of helping. So some of the unnecessary imports, as well as some of the expenditures that was not really urgent at the moment. The government is currently shying away from making those expenditures, which has helped on the fiscal side and also on the external side. But this is not a permanent solution, of course. The government needs to come, normalize slowly. But for now, I think this is helping. But I think the main challenge would be to control inflation. And one option would be to, of course, remove the interest rate caps that currently exist. And of course, also making the exchange rate more flexible would also help. So if the exchange rate is more aligned to the actual market rate, that will encourage more people to send money through formal channels, and also help the government to maybe withdraw the incentive that they provide on remittances. That will also release some of the pressure on the fiscal side as well. And because we have a high inflation, I think it will be important to give targeted fiscal support to the poorer segment of the population. That is, of course, a challenging situation for Bangladesh because we don't have a very good record of targeting, and we don't have a list of the people who should actually get the benefits. So this is something that the government can work on. And of course, there are some long-standing issues like the banking sector reforms and the improvement in business climate that can affect the FDI. These are the issues, and also on the revenue mobilization side. These are the issues we have for many years now. But I think it's time to give more focus on these issues so that we can prevent future crises going forward. So yeah, I think I'll stop here. We are already over time and we're getting late. So thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you very much. Like the poetry you are talking about, economics poetry you are talking about, and which portrayed the current scenario as the fundamental questions. In fact, we are dealing with that. Can we continue our persistency of the growth? Can we control our inflation? Can we increase our revenue flow? Can you reduce our import payment pressure? So along with all of the questions, ultimately are the input of entrepreneurs' decision making. Ultimately, entrepreneurs are the main players who drive the economy and try to solve the question of all of these problems with their performance. So this is a great time for all of us to listen from one of the most successful entrepreneur, Mr. Hoomgorn. And the interesting features of this entrepreneur that he has got the doctorate degree from the most prestigious business school in Bangladesh, that is an IBA, and he's the first DBA graduate from there. So Dr. Navid, we are very proud of you, and on behalf of the BDRL, we would like to take the privilege to congratulate to you for achieving your honor from IBA as a doctorate, as well as we feel very proud as a citizen of Bangladesh as well, that you have demonstrated an extraordinary example as an entrepreneur. So we are very lucky to listen from you that how do you respond to the economic variables and their movements, and what was your experience in last 6 months to tackle those challenges, and how you are preparing yourself for tackling the challenges in the coming half of the year? Please, Dr. Navid.
Thank you very much. First of all, many thanks for inviting me here, Dr. Mamoon, CEO, BDRAL. And most of the economic overview is very much wonderfully discussed in this in the very first presentation by Mr. Kamrul Bari, and then again more enlightened by Mr. Obaidullah and Dr. Sadat. So over here, as the question rightly pointed out by Dr. Mamoon, that how can we mitigate or how can we handle those challenges, basically. So I'm basically a very much business practitioner who is mostly dependent on import-oriented products and also some manufacturing, which are also backed by many import-oriented raw materials. So the issues which we are facing is actually common for most of the entrepreneurs in Bangladesh, because you know, our value addition is mostly by labor rather than really the product. Like we may import the aluminum raw materials, and with the labor we are just giving the shape. So value addition is ours, is basically the labor. So when there is a USD crisis at the moment, and also LC opening becomes very difficult for us. So so that value addition will be also very much difficult for us, because we are not having the raw materials at present. So how can we handle that? Maybe it is right time for us, like not to take a lot of orders as we did before. Like before, most of the entrepreneurs may be targeting that 24 hours the assembly line or the production will go on. So maybe since my raw materials are not there to be in the business, maybe we can just run 8-hour shift for a while for the next 2-3 months. So maybe the question again comes in, like how to run the company with that amount of value addition you are making for your firm to run the costs. So here again, this 2023, I mean, the last 6 months have finished and the next 6 months is coming. So what I feel this year, most of the entrepreneurs, we should not really look for, you know, expansion. Maybe it's not the real time that we should targeting more towards profit. We should target something like little bit humanitarian, like we should do business maybe just to survive in the market at the present days, so that we can be sustainable for the next 2-3 years again. And maybe we should target less job cutting maybe at this moment. What could be the reasons here? You see, past 2 years, due to COVID, we are getting a lot of stimulus packages loan or the Pronodana loans, which we are getting last 2-3 years. But this year is basically the payback period of that one. So again, during payback period, we are not having raw materials. So how can we pay it back? So maybe again, the same situation comes up, that the very first thing we can handle the operations or production in a less capacity for the time being. More than that, when we receive orders, before maybe we used to get an order for 200 pieces of rice cooker maybe. Now we should think about handling that payment into like, not like in one invoice, we should support that 200 pieces of rice cooker. Maybe we could make it 3 separate invoices so that we deliver them in 3 different times, like 15 days one shot, 15 days another shot, again 15 days another one. So in that way, same way, the LC we are not getting like before, like 10 LCs in 10-15 days. Maybe we are also getting the LCs in 10 days, only 1 LC. the same way we are also handling our end that to support the government's overall goal that production capacity also less in that way. But because if we reduce the production that way, there is also some other things are also coming up. In the overall market, the product sales are actually based on some sort of credit portfolio. It's just from my own experiences. So credit portfolio, since overall market, people will have some sort of job cut due to less production and all, they will also have some sort of financial crisis inside their family because they will have very less disposable income or less savings. So when that happens, also they would also fall in some sort of credit. So obviously they would be able to buy less from the retailers or distributors. So actually, in long run, after 2-3 months or 4 months, the market demand will also be less. So why should we have totally zero stock after 3-4 months? So why don't we from now on, we should target less production so that we can be bearable in the market for the next 6 to 9 months with the less production capacity. So my idea is overall, everyone has discussed a lot of economic outlook, but my one is totally market oriented way. I would say a business would be wonderful in 2023 if we could go for very less job cutting and just we survive in the market and we maintain our payments payment schedules with the banks and all. So with that, I would conclude my presentations over here. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your insightful and real life examples. And I believe that your deliveries added value to our understanding and it has deepening our understanding as well. So at this stage, like I want to again come back for the concluding remark from all panelists. I want to start from the Mr. Obaidullah, FCMA. So as a banker from the banking perspectives, like in a one statement, if Ubaid Bhai, if you can you hear me, Ubaid Bhai? Could you please unmute? Yeah. Can you hear?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm hearing you.
Okay.
Okay.
So the last concluding remark within 1 minute, that is from as a banker, professional banker, like how do you particularly predict in the coming 6 months from the banking perspectives that the economy will move and how should a bank response to that movement of the economy? I think there is some network problem. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I have some network problem. Maybe
Should I repeat the question?
Mohan Bhai, due to
Yeah.
internet link, I could not hear a question.
Okay. Now, can you hear me? Then I can repeat again.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Now it's okay.
our curiosity from your concluding remark that as we have seen already the half of the year, now the another half is coming with lot of prosperity as well as uncertainties. So in that case,
Challenges,
from
yeah.
the banking perspectives, how should a bank and the bankers respond to those economic reality in the coming days, considering the last half month's performance?
Yeah. Hello, Mohan bhai, can you hear me? Hello,
Yeah,
Mohan bhai.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Actually, despite all the challenges, banks, all the banks particularly have performed bit well in 2022 in terms of profitability and other business segment, if we say. But with now, while we are preparing budget for 2023, we are predicting that 2023 will not be as good as we performed as bank in 2022. So challenges are more in 2023 than 2022, what we have observed. So this also discussed Sadat Bhai in his discussion that some challenges are ahead in terms of our main earning are from export. Then if the Ukraine war continues, then there will be possibility of recession in Western world. If the recession continues for a while, then the export will be reduced. We have marked highest export in 22, that is more than 50 billion, highest since independence. So we are anxious that this flow of export will not continue, may not continue in 2023, maybe reduce a little bit if the current situation continues. Besides, there is a challenges of remittances also. Remittance are reduces from August to December, and this trend if continues, then this is also a risk for the banks always, and also for the economy, that this dollar crisis will not be controlled or reduced in upcoming days. So for banks, main challenges is to continue or support. As a banker, we are here to support our clients, solve their problems. But in 2023, now at this moment, the main challenges and main problem for the business people is to open LCs who are directly related to these import-based businesses, whether it is in the industry whose raw material are imported or traders whose goods are imported from abroad. This business group of doing their business. So this not only for the banks, if this situation continues, then our GDP growth also may be affected. The GDP growth we are we are experiencing the GDP growth of more than 7% or 7.5%. That is already revised for 2022-23 fiscal year, revised already 6.5%. This may be also further may reduced if this situation continues. For the businesses other than those are not affected by the dollar crisis, local trading, local businesses, those groups may suffer due to the inflation, because due to inflation or purchase price hike of all commodities, because when fuel prices increase massively, then this will affect all people in the society, because transport price hike, there is a every people movement, they have to pay more in their transportation costs. Business houses suffer more in industries suffer due to their captive power for oil and also transportation cost. So these also affected local trader who are not deal with import business. So if this dollar crisis or Ukraine war problem not solved, then there is hard days to come, we are predicting. So in the
Okay.
finally, we can say that a deposit flow is not is a worry. We can still giving loan, but problem is at the end of dollar end. And for local side, it's good, but what I have started that the people's purchasing power is reducing. So who will buy? People definitely bound to buy less with their reducing purchasing power. So these are the areas we have to address in 2023. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vaidhuta. Now, would like to listen the concluding remark from Dr. Nazmus. Like particularly inflation is one of the enemy at this moment. It's a global inflation pressure, and that is impact on our import and also the local inflation trend. So in that respect, particularly in terms of the cost of doing business in Bangladesh, and what are the measures policymakers as well as the business entrepreneurs and corporates could take the initiatives for controlling their cost and increasing their productivity. So what kind of policy support they need, and what kind of uh, corporate in-house initiatives they should take to control the inflationary pressure.
Okay, thank you. So, I mean, in terms of corporates, I think our other distinguished panelists are maybe well placed to suggest more appropriate policy suggestions. But in terms of inflation, what I can say is that in general, the policies from the government side should be, as you correctly mentioned, it should be inflation and not on growth. I think we are we're kind of obsessed with GDP numbers and GDP growth for quite some time now. But I think this is the time when it's necessary to hold back growth, and so that we can tackle inflation that has spillover effect in all the sectors. So there is this trade-off in economics, whether you go for higher GDP growth, and the other option is to restrict your demand and then let the inflation come under control. So I think we are in a situation after many years that we need to follow a contractionary monetary and also contractionary fiscal policies so that we can control inflation at the cost of GDP growth. And once you control the inflation, that has a positive effect on everything. Like people have more purchasing power, that helps them to buy more products, and that helps the corporates and the businesses to be more profitable, and then to expand their business, and that in turn creates more employment, and that creates a positive overall effect in the economy. So this is, I think, one thing that the government really need to understand, and then take measures accordingly. And in terms of corporates, of course, this is of course a difficult time. So they need to take policies, of course, which are different from other types, other times. And I think was our other panelists mentioned that this is probably not the time to go for expansion, rather to go slow and to be patient, and just to see this time get over, and then go for more expression. And I would really like to see that they do not go for job cards or things like that. I think there were some remarks from some of the business leaders after the gas price hike that they don't have other options they don't have no options other to lay off people if the production cost goes so high due to the gas price increase. But I think this is the time they need to, they need to understand the overall situation, and they need to be more considerate of their employees. And at the same time, they'll of course try to see how they can innovate more and try to be more efficient so that they can tackle this kind of situations in future years when a crisis like this comes again. Thank you. I'll stop here.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And at this moment, like, we want to listen the concluding remark from Dr. Naveed, like how you were considering all these aspects, especially inflation. I must say that you are considering the inflationary pressure to set your strategy, or I must say that to like taking your strategic retreat. So how you are like maneuvering your strategy for considering the upcoming inflationary pressure and other economic uncertainty, as well as economic prosperity as well.
Of course, inflation is a big issue when it comes as because due to inflation, all the price hike will be there. But considering the manufacturing segment, the issue of raw material comes in. But for the last few months and for the next few months again, maybe the raw material supply will be very less. So meaning that the price hike is not really there. How? Because you are producing the next 6 months, you are sustaining the next 6 months with the goods which you had in the last 3 months. So it is the businessman's strategy whether he will take advantage on that inflation and he will charge high to the consumers. That's one aspect. Again, if he gets to import again raw material, then obviously inflation will come to play here, because my price of purchasing that raw material is higher. Maybe here again the game of the investor or the entrepreneurs comes in, whether he will adjust a price like an average pricing or not, or he will just price it based on the last raw material purchase price. So how that person will play with that inflation totally based on his case. So it's very difficult to say where should I place myself at that moment. So again, I would say this year is very difficult year for any type of entrepreneurs and or any citizen of our country. So we should take everyone a stand just to protect the industries or just to be slow and carry on. But however, maybe it's also a time for government also play some role over here to help the import-based manufacturing firms to help them to export also. What's the reason here? We are very much dependent on, RMG or leather goods or the pharmaceuticals exports only. But the other sectors which we manufacture only for the local consumption, maybe if government can help those manufacturers how to go further for the exports with the value additions only on the labor, maybe with that only how to enable those exports, maybe the government may get some extra foreign reserve or extra US dollar income. Maybe that would help us to improve the US reserve again. So I would say again, it's time for the businessman or the government also to diversify their portfolio to get more export-oriented manufacturing agencies to come and play in the industry. So that's my remark only. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Navid, for your insightful inputs. So at this stage today, we got the news that IMF has approved the $4.5 billion loan. So it has many aspects, but one of the interesting aspects that IBM has, IMF has the confidence on us to give the loan. And as our finance minister also reiterated that it also demonstrate the fundamentals and the attractiveness of Bangladesh economy. In spite of that, yes, we also believe that due to the persistent growth dynamic, due to the completion of some larger projects, mega projects, and internal customer base, and tolerable level of the debt position, and possible trend of our export, and all other challenges we discussed. Considering all of the things, we believe that we will be in a cautionary position in the coming half of the year to overcome all the challenges. And I believe that all the parties like government, policymakers, industry and entrepreneurs, academia and the research organization, all the parties will work together and play their respective role to tackle the challenges and exploit the potential and encounter the challenges in a sustainable way to overcome the problems. So though we had a question answer session, but due to the time constraint, some time is already over. So I'd like to conclude the session at this stage. And again, the sincere gratitude on behalf of the BDRL and my all team members to Dr. Nazmul Sadat, Dr. Navid, and Mr. ATM Obaidur Rahman, FCMA. We are really grateful to you for your presence and giving precious time. Today is the working day, but after working hour, you have present here and given your time and share your thoughtful and very rich inputs. I believe we have been, all of the participants have been enlightened from your inputs. And I believe that the relationship between the BDRL and you all will be continuing, and your guidance, your inputs will be always will be treated as the worthy input for the BDRL, because the vision of the BDRL is to build such a credit rating company as well as a knowledge-based company, because we'd like to ensure the credible value-added services for our clients, for all economic entities, so that we can contribute in the sustainable business growth as well as economic growth. With these few words, thank you very much to all of you again, and good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Assalamu alaikum, Tom.
Thank you, sir.